welcome back to Season 5 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hello and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 178, Season 5, Episode 15. I am happy to have you back with me today. I've got a great show for you. I've got Chief Master Dan Lovas back on the show today, so it's always an honor to have him on the show, and I can't wait to share more of his great knowledge with you today. So I'm still dealing with my broken foot, and it's a trial. 6 weeks of not being able to put your foot down is a little excessive in my book, and I'm just dealing with it. And so I'm using the hashtag no excuses. So I'm finding out ways to get things done, to do the things I want to do, and put together workouts that I can still do with my body. I've gotten back on the floor at martial arts, been able to teach thanks to Chief Master, believing in me and my abilities, even when I'm on crutches. And it's really challenged my teaching abilities because I can't just show people how I do it with my body. I have to actually talk them through it. And so, even a huge obstacle can be a big blessing and a really big learning opportunity. And so that's kind of what I was telling you last week. Obstacles are just problems are just solutions waiting to be found. So if you can keep the right attitude and you can keep that positive, that rational, not just positive thinking, because positive thinking can be absolutely useless if you don't rationalize it and put it into action. So that's why hashtag no excuses. I've been working out. I've been trying to keep my body going, try to stay strong. My one leg is going to be like massive. My other leg is going to be like puny. But, I'm supposed to be doing some physical therapy and stuff like that. And I'll just cross that bridge when we get there. It looks like that's be my kicking leg from now on. But so I encourage you to use the same, where there's a will, there's a way. And so, your dreams are super important. Your goals are super important. And if it's super important to you, find your passion and make it happen. So I'm really trying. And I tell myself that every day. I find my inner drill sergeant, my inner Sergeant Bennett, and it's just move it, Hathaway. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So that's just how I do it. Okay, speaking of how we do it, I am encouraging you to head on over to www.patreon.com/changingearth and become a subscriber of my podcast. Show your support. I've been thinking about changing up the structure of it. My lowest payment is a $3 payment, which I thought, $3 a month is cheese. Can you even buy a pack of gum for $3, it seems like, anymore? But, the turnout hasn't been as great as I thought it would be. So I'm considering taking that down to $1. I'm also considering just offering like a one-time payment on my website to get access to all of the information. Maybe people don't want to be paying a monthly subscription to something. Maybe they just want to pay once and have the access to that information. So I would love to hear your feedback. Please take a moment and give me some feedback. Because if I'm just out here calling out to the world and nobody's calling me back, then there's really no point in it. So I love your feedback on this issue. What would work for you so that I can really just keep cruising and doing what I love and providing you with more great stories and providing you with all this great education and keep the ball rolling. So, I'm really curious what would work best for you. $1 a month or a one-time payment, and then you get access to all the bonus information forever or something like that. So just please take a moment and provide me your feedback. You can do that on my website, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you go, whatever social media network you use, I'm probably there. So please just go and give me the feedback that I'm looking for, because I really value that from you guys. Like I'm doing all this for you guys, And yeah, it helps me along the way, and I'm having a ball. But really, I'm trying to help you so that we together can create prepared communities. So it really is valuable to me when I hear the feedback from you. So please take a moment and let me know, if I was going to contribute, I would rather do $1 a month. If I was going to contribute, I would rather just do a one-time payment. That's all I'm asking, and I'd really love to hear back from you on that one. And then if, head on over to patreon.com, help me out. Help the show out, keep it on the air, and let's do this. Let's do this together. It's really important, and I believe in all of you. And I believe that the climate change, whether that's man-produced or earth-produced, you can find your own answer there. But you can't deny that it's happening, and you can't deny that we need to be adaptive species to be able to handle it in the future. Okay, so speaking of climate change, I have been keeping a big eye on Yellowstone because we've had so many earthquakes, so many really big earthquakes going across our globe and stuff. And so that always, ring of fire, and that's concerning. Mammoth is concerning, but Yellowstone is really the elephant in the room. And so I've been keeping a sharp eye on Yellowstone. There's been a lot of things going on there. Some of the ground change has been so severe that parts of the boardwalk have been wiped out. Residences that the scientists that live there and work there, one of the dorm buildings, they actually had to evacuate it because of the ground movement caused cracks right through it. And one of the most significant things that has happened recently is Steamboat Geyser has erupted for the 30th time this year, which is the most recorded eruptions in history. So Steamboat usually erupts every 10 years and 5 years. It's not old faithful. It's not something you can set a clock to and see it happen. It's more of an irregular eruption at this site. And for it to erupt the 30th time, the most times in recorded history, that's something pretty significant. So get out there, do a little research, and find out what's happening at Yellowstone, because there's some things happening. I don't think it's time to throw up any kind of warnings or alarms, but whenever you see deep earthquakes that happen anywhere in the world, that's good for the people on top of the planet, that we don't feel a lot of shaking when these deep earthquakes happen, so that's a good thing, right? Well, however, if you look at the seismographs that are in all of the volcanoes across the whole country, all of these volcanoes will show a spike in their magma levels and stuff. So these earthquakes can be really concerning and have a big impact on Yellowstone. So it's just something to stay heads up on. If you're in that area, you should definitely be heads up on that. And you should know, you should have a plan for if that ash comes in, what are we going to do? How long do we need to hunker in? Those kinds of things. So we're going to be looking at that more this season, but that's just kind of a precursor. All right, so last week in the Dark Days in Denver adventure, Greg and Penny arrived, and Erica was, exploring the homesteads and things. This week, we're going to follow Daniel as he goes out and trains with Master Rowan. And as I mentioned before, I got Chief Master Dan Lovas back on the show, and he is going to talk to us about blade fighting. So not necessarily swords. We're talking more about knives because that's more relevant. I mean, I don't know many people that are carrying around swords nowadays, but, it's really important to know how to defend yourself from a knife and how to use a knife in your own defense, because it's a weapon you can more readily carry. So I got Chief Master Dan Lovas back on. We're going to hear from him after we explore Chapter 15 of Dark Days in Denver. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Chapter 15. Erica spent the next few days with Penny. She would walk over to Penny's tent early in the morning so they could have breakfast before she needed to check in for morning PT. Surprised that Erica was up so early, Nancy would join them. Nancy was helping around the camp with mending, and Roxy, Penny's daughter, decided to join her at the shop. Everyone else was training in the AM. The units grew and grew as more refugees moved through and more individuals joined in the effort. Erica spent any free moments that she could sneak out with the Colorado boys, but most of her time was spent around the camp. Erica cherished her days with Penny. They'd spent so many days apart that it was almost like forming a friendship all over again. Erica wished she could just focus on her children and their well-being like Penny did, but that wasn't in her cards. She knew her leisure time would be over soon. Her role would have been fulfilled, and at this point she welcomed it. She was tired of living someone else's life in shame, even if that meant she would be hunted again. Daniel became obsessed with working in Mr. Rowan's studio. He went there every day but told no one, not even Carmen. It was his private sanctuary. "I can't stand training anymore," he told Mr. Rowan while he was working one day. "Members of any fighting force must want to be there in order for their efforts to be valued," Mr. Rowan responded. "Well, I don't want to be there." "Staff Sergeant Merkley will be the death of me," he replied. "Then why do you go?" "You can make a living or at least survive on your artwork," Mr. Rowan told him. "I have to protect my mom," he replied candidly, losing himself in his work. "That's why the staff sergeant has it out for me. He knows who my mom is." "Your mother?" He thought about the woman. He had watched the feisty woman working in the training yard. After thinking on it, he always found her at the training facilities, but rarely did he see her anywhere else. It made him more curious the more he thought about it. "Your mother seems like she can take care of herself," the old man replied casually, hoping the boy would continue the candid conversation. "Yeah, but they would use me to get to her," Daniel continued absent-mindedly. "Who would?" Mr. Rowan questioned. "The federal forces," Daniel replied, before he looked up from his work with a horrified look on his face. He suddenly realized this was information he was not supposed to be sharing. "What did your mother do?" Mr. Rowan pressed. "My mom has always fought for me," he replied humbly, sidestepping the question. "And I can't even defend her." "Why would they come after her family? It doesn't add up, son," Mr. Rowan prodded. He'd heard of refugees being hunted down, but not their families. "They would. I saw it with my own eyes, and all I could do was run like a coward," Daniel said, looking down. "Come with me," the man insisted, taking the brush from Daniel's hand. The boy followed him to a room that Mr. Rowan always kept closed. As the doors opened, a training studio with 2 swords crisscrossed on the wall was revealed. "My passion for painting comes from my love of the sword," the old man told him. "I'm not worthy of your training, sir. You know what I did," Daniel replied. "I have already decided. If you turn me down now, it would be a great insult," Mr. Rowan told him. "But, sir, I haven't been truthful with you," Daniel admitted, tucking his head down. "Does this have to do with your mother?" Mr. Rowan asked, recognizing that the boy had dodged the question earlier. "Yes, sir," the boy hesitated. Then he looked up, determined. "My name is Daniel Moore. I am the son of Erica Moore, the lone survivor of Sacramento." "Good for you, son. That's even more reason for me to train you," Mr. Rowan replied, unimpressed. "But, sir," Daniel stammered at his reaction. "Daniel, I'm more concerned with the side of yourself you keep buried, not the temporary lie you're living to keep your family safe," the man admitted. They entered the room and Mr. Rowan handed the boy a wooden training sword. "The sword is an extension of yourself, a brush that you can use to paint your imagery onto the battlefield," Mr. Rowan directed, dancing with his own metal sword across the floor. His fluid strokes cut through the air, and the landscape that he painted shone brightly in Daniel's mind. Daniel was fascinated and raised his sword into the air. "Think of painting. Think of the image you want to create," Mr. Rowan instructed, watching the boy nervously stumble across the room. "Work your sword like your brush." The boy's movements turned fluid as he envisioned all the colors he would add into the landscape. "Good. Now learn to work outside of your palette. Feel the emotion behind the strokes and let them flow out the end of the sword," Mr. Rowan suggested. Daniel spun across the floor in a crazed fury, striking his imaginary opponents. His mind envisions the reds, pinks, and purples of blood thrown through the air. The thoughts of the man shooting Megan's mother and his friends spun around in his mind. He was a scared child, desperate for survival. His parents left him to protect his grandparents, and he was embarrassed he couldn't have done more. Without the few actions his fear caused him to take, they would have been kidnapped and held hostage in exchange for his mother's life. He knew she would have given it. He never wanted to feel that vulnerable again, ever. Tears fell down his face as his energy left his body. Mr. Rowan caught him as he collapsed. "Good, Daniel. That's very good. You must know yourself inside if you expect to influence the energy outside of you," Mr. Rowan told him. "I couldn't stop them, Mr. Rowan. They killed my friends.
shot them down like they were nothing. I saved my grandma, but I ran away and hid. They would have captured me to get to my mom. It would have been my fault. Sounds to me like you let wisdom and your brilliant colors guide your life. The path before us is not always clear, but if we put one foot in front of another, the strokes on the canvas become an inspiration for others, Mr. Rowan assured him. And now, my young student, you must let your feet carry you home. We have much to learn tomorrow. Daniel looked up and saw that the sun was indeed setting. He thought he had more time. Thank you, Mr. Rowan. I expect you right after lunch tomorrow, the old man commanded. Yes, sir, I'll be here, Daniel concluded, heading out the door. He ran through the gate of the homesteaders' camp. His feet flew across the dirt, and the boy noticed that he felt better, lighter somehow. He couldn't wait to learn more from Mr. Rowan. As he passed the rows of tents, he saw Carmen out in front of his tent. Hi, Carmen, Daniel greeted him warmly. Hi, Daniel. Where are you coming back from so quickly? Daniel's friend wondered. Oh, I was just out drawing. You know me. There's so much activity here, Daniel replied. I haven't seen you at all after morning PT. We're going to have a big soccer game after PT tomorrow. You going to play? The boy wondered. I don't think so, Carmen. I told this lady that I would do a portrait of her, Daniel replied. Carmen looked at him blankly. What's up, dude? You haven't been acting like yourself lately. I know, Carmen. I just need time to think. It's nice to be able to relax once in a while, and Staff Sergeant Merkley is always on me at PT. I just need a break, Daniel replied. That guy sure does have it out for you, Carmen laughed. I think maybe he's just pissed his dad put him in charge of training the kids. But why you? He knows my mom, Daniel admitted to him. Oh, that makes sense, Carmen said, connecting the dots. Or his underpants are too tight and his balls are getting crushed all day, Carmen suggested, laughing. Daniel laughed at his joke, thinking of the staff sergeant with tiny little underpants. Carmen, I gotta go. My grandma and grandpa will be waiting for me, Daniel admitted. I think we're all going over to dinner together anyway. Let me tell my mom what's up, and I'll go with you, Carmen said, eager to spend some time with his friend. That would be great, Daniel agreed, stepping into the tent so they could tell Penny. Hi, Daniel, Penny greeted him. I haven't seen you around in a while. I've been busy, Daniel said shortly. I guess so. Your mom just left to go get cleaned up for dinner, she informed him. We're going over to meet them there. Is that okay, Mom? Carmen wondered. Sounds good to me, Penny answered. Daniel smiled at her response and the boys headed out of the tent. Daniel had missed spending time with his friend and was eager to do some catching up.
Daniel catches up with his old friend at the end of this chapter, but he still won't share where he's been. And so that's going to become an issue later on. We'll explore that later on in the book. But in the meantime, he's been out training with Blade. And today I have Chief Master Dan Lovas back on the show. Chief Master Dan Lovas is a martial arts instructor. When Dan was young, he was fascinated with Bruce Lee movies. They spoke to his soul in a way that nothing else had. He desperately wanted to learn how to move like Bruce, so he found a boys and girls club that offered judo and kung fu. He took them both. Plagued with indecision over which one he liked best, he decided leaving either of the styles behind was not an option. One day, while practicing forms at a 24-hour fitness, a man, Joe Tucker, challenged him to a sparring match. Dan's confidence was high, and even though Joe broke his foot over Dan's head, the outcome of the match came out much differently than Dan expected. Joe introduced Dan to Taekwondo and Chief Master Jack Corey, who was a third-degree black belt at the time. Applying his previously established training regimen to Taekwondo, Dan's passion for competition grew. He jumped at every chance he had to compete and compiled a long list of competitive accomplishments, including a 1990 ATA World Champion, 2 times ITC National Champion, 2 times GSKA National Champion, Full Force World Champion, Barnacles fighting 15-0 with 9 head kick KOs. Taekwondo is still a way of life for Chief Master Dan Lovas. His relationship with Chief Master Corey grew, and he still trains under him today. Chief Master Lovas' teaching instruction is internationally renowned, and he has been named Instructor of the Year 4 times. His love of martial arts doesn't end with Taekwondo. He has a third-degree black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, a black belt in Kung Fu, and a black belt in Silat. Dan is a certified instructor of Tai Chi and criminal countermeasures and a graduate of Eskrima.
Even with all these other accomplishments, Taekwondo is his love, and he thanks God for it at the end of each day. Many years have passed since 1988 when Dan received his first dan in Taekwondo, but his dedication and commitment to the art have earned him the honor of receiving his 8th degree black belt in October of 2017. If you would like to contact Dan for more information, you can reach him at www.auburnmartialarts.com. That's www.auburnmartialarts.com. So let's go ahead and welcome Dan to the show.
Today I am back with Chief Master Dan Lovas. Dan, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So I always use my Michigan accent on the end of your name. How do you say your name properly?
Lovas.
Yeah. Okay, I'm close. I'm close.
Yugoslavian name.
All right. I just add a little bit more of the AS to the end. All right. Well, there's a good reason for that, probably, because you kick my butt daily. So
Just for fun.
Yup. All right, so today Daniel is training, and he's starting to train with the sword. It's pretty cool little addition that I did to the book just to develop Daniel's character and just to bring him a little bit more to life because he was like the child growing up in this system, so I wanted to really give him his own niche. So it's more likely in a survival situation that we'd be fighting with a knife rather than a sword. Mm-hmm. I don't know many people that have a sword. Besides myself and probably you, and so
you probably know more than you think.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Mid-range weapon. You don't have to load it.
Yep. And you never run out of bullets. So you could probably hook that thing to a longer spear. Anyhow, chances are we'll probably be working with a knife, and you know a lot about knife fighting, so that's why I wanted to have you on the show today. Let's just start with what knife should we be carrying? Should we be carrying a separate fighting knife and a bush knife, or what's your recommendation there?
In my vehicle and on my person, I have 2 blades. So I have a pocket knife, and I like the type of knife that when I pull it out of my pocket, it opens the blade. And I like a locking blade. I don't want to get cut if I'm having to use my knife. Mm-hmm. I like to use more of a dagger for puncture. And I want a very sharp one. I use Cold Steel as my favorite brand. I buy a lot of Cold Steel products. I can keep the blade very sharp, and it'll stay sharp a long time.
And you got to be careful about the daggers, though. In your state, pay attention, because sometimes they allow the double-edged, sometimes not. Yeah. And I know there's like an 1.5 inch limit or something in Cali.
I use a double edge. However, one side is razor sharp. The other side is semi-sharp, so it qualifies as a single edge. However, the top is tapered for puncture. Yep. The length of the blade, you can go across your hand, and as long as it doesn't stick past your hand, it's legal. And for most people, that's a 3.5 to 4 inch blade.
Well, that sucks if you have small hands.
Yeah, you're gonna have to might be harder to puncture an organ that way.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, get through the rib cage and in. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the blades have the little divot in them, right? And that's the blood lead or whatever.
If you've ever used a blade for a puncture, if you pull out, there's suction. And if you were to actually pierce a human body, it might be very hard to pull the knife out. People don't realize that there's a lot of suction once you've done that.
Yeah.
So if there's a blood group, it can go in and out just as easy, either way.
Got you. Yeah, that would be funny. You try to pull it back out. What the hell?
Yeah.
All right. So how about
twist it?
How about the right, there you go, into the ribs? How about the bush knife? What are your?
Charade and K-Bar both make a really good bush knife.
Yeah.
I use one that's 1,050 steel, so it's very heavy. I could pierce a car door with it really easy. I can cut wood with it. Part of the blade is serrated, part of it is not. I have a tapered dagger point, and I have storage in that knife where I have a fire starter, fishing line, some basic survival stuff.
Okay.
So I have the large, heavy knife in all my bug out bags.
Like the Rambo one.
Exactly.
You just have the compass and everything on it.
Yeah, nice. There's there's a lot of truth to having a knife like
Yep.
that in survival.
Fair enough.
You want to be able to set a snare with fishing line to eat.
Yep.
Or make a stone trap. And if you don't have a good knife to carve all your parts, you won't be able to make basic stuff.
That's what everybody always asks. What one thing would you take? What one thing if you only had one thing? I'm like, the knife. I mean,
Absolutely
hands
survival
down.
knife.
Yep.
In U.S. K-Bar, they've used that. That was our bayonets, U.S. troops for many years. It's kind of a light knife. I like a heavier one now. I do have the K-Bar in a number of my bug-out bags. I say a number because I have 2 at home by my front door. I have 2 in each vehicle that I own.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's what I was like. Aren't you scared about it getting stolen? You're like, no. I've
I'm
got
more afraid of not having it.
Right? 2 is 1, 1 is none, right? I guess. And that's one thing I do not have redundancies on is my go bag. Well, I have the EDC kit. and
I'm
that
sad.
go bag. That's like a lot of money on those bags.
And another thing is, if you get a blade that does have a serrated side, you don't have to worry about sharpening as much. So that's a big plus
right.
as well.
Okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
keep the stone there.
A couple other things I look at, like my pocket knife, it is stainless steel. One of them is. And then my bush knives, they're actually coated. I like the black coating on them so that you can't see the reflection. So for me,
Oh,
I
good
can
call.
conceal it a little
Yeah.
bit better.
That makes sense. I mean, when we're airsoft and if you see any kind of flashing going on, that's dead giveaway.
Yeah, and then you're going to keep it from corroding as well because it has a coating.
With the black. So that's an actual coating on the knife instead of, I thought they were just like tempering the steel over differently to make it do that black color.
No, there's a coating. Pounded steel, you can actually see the folds and the ripples like a samurai blade.
Yeah,
I
like
have
a
I have a
Damascus.
few bladed weapons that have been pounded steel. Thousands of folds.
Yeah, and then they dip those in acid to make all the colors pop out. They're
Exactly.
freaking gorgeous. Yeah, love it. No, my knife, I just got a new one because I gave my friend Dale, I gave him my hatchet, which was pretty sick, but it was only like $4.80 steel. And this one's $10.95.
Smart.
Right.
A little bit
Takes
more
out-
weight.
Oh, yeah. So, like, when I'm trying to buy big old things of steaks, I'll even bust out my bush knife just because it gives you more, whack power to get through there.
That's a really good point. I use my weapons that I carry often for basic cooking and things like that because I want it to be part of me. I want it to be so much a part of my everyday life. I use them for everything. I even open letters with my pocket knife. I mean, just to have it and use it everyday life is going to make it feel more comfortable for me.
That's true.
More of an extension of who I am.
Yeah, I have a fixed blade that I carry, like, all the time. And then the big one I use for the ducks. And remind me, because I have a duck to give you for Christmas for
Awesome.
on your way home. So
Yummy.
Get it out of my freezer. Put it in your freezer. All right, so somebody comes at you with a knife. I know this is going to be hard to do over a microphone, but what is your best defensive?
The best defense for a bladed weapon is distance.
Yeah.
If they can't reach you, they can't cut you. If you could get away from a weapon and someone has that weapon and you don't, and you're not a trained knife fighter, I would probably create distance or use a longer weapon myself. If I have a weapon and 9 times out of 10, I'm not going after their body. I'm actually striking at their circulatory. If they reach out to me, I'm trying to cut where their veins are, where the veins are closest to the skin. If I had a blunt weapon, I'd be attacking where the bones are close to the skin. With a knife, you attack where your circulatory is.
Got it.
Inside of your legs, inside of your arms. Now, if someone was to attack me and I did one slice to their wrist, because I've trained myself to do that over the period of many decades, if I hit their wrist with adrenal stress, it's like turning on the sink. They could bleed out in like 5 minutes with the adrenal stress if they don't stop and treat their wound.
So you've just diffused the situation in one foul swoop right there.
Absolutely. And if I have someone attacking me with a knife and I can't get away, I treat it like a poisonous snake. The blade is the fangs. I cannot get hit, so I have to grab it behind the head, which is grabbing the wrist. Yeah. And I actually have to control that and keep it away from my vital areas. If I had to defend myself, I might put my hand over my neck. How many times can you be cut in the neck? Zero.
Zero.
So
Yeah.
in knife fighting, we call our back hand that's on our neck our live hand. Smart reason. It keeps you alive.
Alive.
So having one hand on my neck, if I don't have the proper clothes to protect myself there, is going to help
Yeah.
quite a bit.
That was funny in class the one time that you were like, how many times can you get hit in the neck? Everybody's like, once. No, none. Zero times. And then also the Marines were the leather necks because they always wore big leather collars so that they couldn't get their heads cut off by the scimitars, which I found really interesting. So I was like, okay, doomsday situation, you might want to think about some kind of a neck covering. Would probably drive you bonkers to do that. So
Exactly. However, if you're getting a knife and you want to learn to defend yourself, the first thing you do is you learn how to open your knife. And actually, when I open my knife, I pull my hand slightly behind me so no one can see the length of the blade or actually see the blade. They might have heard it open, but they don't know the actual threat till it's too late.
yeah, what's the size there?
So you practice opening it and your position, looking in the mirror. Once you have brandish your weapon, you don't want them to see it until the last second. And then when you're using your weapon, practicing, you need to practice turning the blade into your target. A lot of people swing their knife and they actually aren't turning the blade into a cutting area. So it sounds crazy, but it helps you to actually practice cutting things.
Okay. Yeah, that's why you should get it out and actually use it, right?
I use mine all the time. Mine are so sharp I could shave with them. Cut paper like effortless, like a razor blade.
Yeah.
I keep them that sharp.
That's pretty impressive. I'm working on it. I've got all my stones now, and I'm doing it properly instead of like the little stupid ones that you buy at the hardware store. You just run them through. No, it's horrible on the good knives.
Yeah. And I have fun with it. I grow a lot of tomatoes and things. I might throw a tomato up, slice it in half, or have someone throw a tomato at me and I'll spear it or cut it.
Oh, I'll throw a tomato at you anytime.
Fun times, yeah.
No
But
problem.
it's something that you have to use. If you don't use it, it's not really an extension of your body. And a bladed weapon or anything that you put in your hand should be an extension of your body. That means you're as good with it as you are with your own hands. And if you're not there, it'll help you, but you could be in danger still.
Well, even with my knife doing the ducks, I came down with it, had my hand around the handle, came down, and my finger just got whammed in between the knife and the log. So it's something I would have never thought about had I not been actually practicing physically using it, to go, hey, I need to change that angle when I come down.
And here's something else to think about with knife defense. I've taught a lot of bladed weapons for law enforcement over the years, and normally I go 11 feet away, and all they have to do is hit me with their club, flashlight, anything, before I can actually put the magic marker on their circulatory system. I use a magic marker. And I normally go through 30, 40 police officers and kill them with a magic marker.
Wow.
Because they don't realize how fast 11 feet can be closed.
Yep.
And they don't realize a trained knife fighter is one or two moves ahead of them. They're looking like they're coming in one direction. They're going to come a different direction. Right. There's a strategy to attacks. And anyone who's trained in eskrima, if you want to learn how to use a knife, take eskrima classes. Filipino stick fighting, which is designed to teach you how to use a machete and a dagger.
Okay.
So there you have your two
I
different
love the
lengths.
eskrima sticks.
And I love it as well.
Yeah,
so it
it's
really
cool
makes
stuff.
a difference.
It's a lot of fun. You got to figure out the martial arts school near you that has that, though. A lot of people don't offer weapons as part of their system and things like that. So, yeah, it's nice.
So another part of training with a weapon, if you're doing a sword, you will be out there moving with this long weapon, learning how to not cut yourself with it.
Right, your ear.
And the biggest mistake people make with weapons is too much follow through. They'll maybe do a one strike, which is from 1 o'clock down to 5 o'clock, or 1 o'clock down to 7 o'clock, I said that wrong. And they will go completely past, and once their arm is past their center line, they're vulnerable for people to come in.
Right.
So using a weapon, make sure that you're trained by the proper person who's an expert to teach you the ending points of your slashes so that you're not left vulnerable.
Yeah, that makes complete sense because a lot of times you overdo it, or people even block. They'll block out so wide that they just give you the huge opening. That
Exactly. And you know, as soon as you start blocking a knife, you could be blocking with your circulatory and cause them to win by trying to defend. If you get into the right school, you'll learn how to do what's called outer shell blocking, where you use the area that bleeds slow, tendons and bone area versus vascular system.
Yeah.
Whenever you're dealing with a knife.
That makes a lot of sense. Because I would be like, oh, outer forearm block, and then you're like, done.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't even think about like the targets, the key little targets. That's awesome. Yeah. Now I have more stuff to practice. You always do that for me. Somehow.
You know, and then not only that, what is your target menu? It's a circulatory, so wrist, anywhere on the inside of the arms or legs.
The thigh, I mean, you could get the femoral.
They can die quick, but if you hit them in the wrist and with adrenal stress, it's as fast as turning on your water at your sink.
Yeah.
They're
It's
bleeding
literally
that
gonna
fast.
Squirt.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy. And then they have to stop. And like I always tell everybody, like the faster you can diffuse the situation, I'm a fighter, that's what I do. But the faster you can diffuse it and get the hell out of there, the better. Because you don't put yourself open to injury then.
Exactly. In my career, I've had 2 attempts on stabbings on me. And I was very fortunate that I'd been trained and I was able to defuse and take the knife away. However, I did get cut once, and in most bladed weapon fights, both people are going to get cut. Let's not fool ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, we're dealing with a weapon, unless you're knife fighting daily, you're probably going to get cut. But the key is minimize it. Minimize where you're cut. Make it be an outer shell area that's not going to bleed out.
So let's talk about that. Now we're in a survival situation, and you get cut by somebody else's knife. You know, what do you...
Well, the first thing you have to do is create distance to get away from that person. If you continue to fight, you will bleed out. Okay? Second thing is you must stop the bleeding. Third, now you have to clean the wound.
Yeah, fast.
Because we don't know. I mean, in Indonesia, they pound oleander into all their bladed weapons. I have a carumpet I scratched myself with and got cellulitis from, and ended up going on an IV pick line for 2 weeks because it almost killed me.
Yeah.
From a little bit of poison that was infused into the steel. Yeah. So in bad times, those practices will become normal.
Yeah.
People will be,
why not?
Oleander's all over the United States. So is pyracantha. Those are the 2 main ones.
Yeah, and oleander's bad stuff. Like there was a story of a Boy Scout that used the oleander branch to cook his hot dog, and yeah. So that's what scares me, and not even like people purposefully poison it. What if they're using it as their daily tool? They have AIDS or whatever, and then now they just stabbed you with it, and game over.
Exactly.
You know?
So
leather outfits, like that's what I tell everybody. I'm like, even if you don't have like bulletproof stuff, the more armor protection,
body armor is good.
You can put on yourself, the better. I mean, I got hockey gear. I'm gonna like rework that stuff.
Oh yeah. In the ancient days, they wore their chain gear. It's kind of like shark protection. Keeps you from getting cut. Yep. They even make tactical gear out of Kevlar now that doesn't cut.
Right. Yeah, it's like, okay, bulletproof is one thing, but even if you're not going bulletproof, I was talking to people about helmets, and you have a helmet on your head, so you're running away, you fall down a hill, smash your head open. Wouldn't you rather have a helmet on your head? Armor. So
it's true.
It's going to help. Alrighty. So anything else the listeners would really need to know when it comes to just basic knife?
Basic. For instance, my kids' bug out bags, they have $12 knives I put in there with a glass breaker, a cutter, and a serrated point. You can go super basic. If you're going for personal protection, you're going to carry a knife in your pocket. Don't skimp. Spend $100. I carry a knife that's a $300 knife in my pocket, and I have multiples. In case I've lost it, I want to replace it immediately. Yeah. Good place to buy those are USA or Midway. Online, they carry cold steel blades at a very good discount.
Yeah, the other thing is, I just got reamed from this from Doug, is, where is your knife? 30 seconds, right? You should be able to reach it, or probably that's even too long. I think he tells me like 5 seconds.
I can have my blade open in a second.
Right? Yeah. He's like, where is it? Like, oh, it's in my purse. Oh, no, you're screwed. You're done. So, yeah, that's something that I think about. Well, a lot of times I have small pockets and stuff.
Well, I showed you me pulling my knife out the other day. How fast was it?
Yeah, that was like
1 second.
Yeah.
Blade's open.
1, 2. Yep. Yeah, I have my fixed blade that I can wear on the outside. So, I mean, I guess I just have to start doing that more. Because 2 seconds, you got to be ready to evacuate in 5 minutes and have your weapon out in 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah. I can actually take my pocket knife out faster than my fixed blade. My fixed blade has a snap that it has to be popped and then pulled out. And a fixed blade is, unless you're carrying it in your lower back, which it's great if you're not sitting down. If you're sitting down, it's very uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm getting one.
But if you put your hand in your pocket or just 2 fingers in your pocket, you can have the blade that's the width of your hand in a second open.
Right.
Let's remember, 9/11 were box cutters. It doesn't matter how long the blade is. What matters is the target.
Yep.
The circulatory system.
That's absolutely true, because you can just whack that sucker open. I like that. Now I'm going to have to think like a lot harder when I'm playing with the Eskrima sticks, just where your targets are going to be.
And where's the blade on the stick?
I know, like the neck, you think neck, stab for the heart kind of thing, but that's just way better to go for the wrist. It's so much easier.
And you're farther away.
Yeah, you don't have to get into the danger zone.
Yeah, there's a system of Eskrima called Largomondo, which was created for our U.S. troops in World War II by Grandmaster Jerome from the Bahala system. And he showed how by hitting the circulatory, if you injured the person, they couldn't fight, and it took more people to take care of them, and they could get infected. So it was a smarter method than just putting a bullet in them.
Yeah, work smarter, not harder. I always like that.
It's not as safe, though, as putting a bullet in.
True, because they could still come at
but
you.
But it is quieter.
Yeah, you can sneak on them. And that's always good. Situation where it's like defending your house and stuff. My buddy was always like, so leave the house. If somebody comes into your house, big group that you can't handle, leave the house, hide, and then come back at nighttime with your knife. And I was like, oh, that's true.
Yeah, but if you leave, they could, inhabit your house now, or decide that this is a really good place. I'm going to live here.
Well, that's what he's saying.
Come
Let
back
him
and
live
kill
there,
him.
and then come back in, and come back and kill him. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't even think that way, but yeah.
Oh, it's a strategy.
Opens my brain up,
Got to have strategies. If you don't have a business plan, you will become someone else's.
Yeah, fair enough. Boy, I've heard that a lot. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for coming talking knives. I think we've got it covered. I hope everybody has some good tips, because I definitely learned a lot. So, what about the fixed blade? Would you rather have the fixed? You like a locking one, the fold and lock?
I like the fold and lock for speed, how fast I can take it out, and no one sees it on me. If I have a fixed blade and they see it, they know how long that blade is.
Fair enough.
I mean, there's no element of surprise now.
They know what you're... Like the Crocodile Dundee, that ain't a knife.
This is a knife.
That's how mine looks.
Exactly.
Alrighty, cool. Thanks so much, Dan, for coming by. I appreciate it.
No problem. Stay sharp.
Thanks, Chief Master, so much for coming on the show and sharing your time and your knowledge with us and my audience. It's just absolutely my honor to get to train with you on a daily basis. This man, he's a gift from God. He's an angel. And everybody that he meets, he tries to make into a better person than when he met them. And Chief Master, I just want you to know that all of your time and efforts are so appreciated by everyone whose life that you impact, whether they realize it or not. So thank you not only for coming on the show, but for everything you do every single day. I also want to give a shout out to all of my current Patreon members. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. It makes a huge, huge difference in keeping this show going. And if you would like to become a Patreon member and provide your support, head on over to www.patreon.com/changingearth. That's www.patreon.com/changing-earth. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope that you are enjoying the show and you are educating your brain and going out there and just owning it, because that's what it's all about. Prepared individuals create prepared communities, and that's what it's all about here at the Changing Earth podcast. So until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, Battle for the South, and Dark Days in Denver at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.